Morning, awesome people. Welcome back to the channel. I'm the GM Philosopher. This is going to be another unplugged episode, an episode where I just speak to you in the camera, no editing, no nothing like that. It is early in the morning here, drinking my Rockstar, getting the day kicked off right. Going Rockstar instead of coffee because I need that extra kick. With that being said, I want to talk today about when players don't show up to the session. And I have basically three things I want to talk about. I have two different schools of thought to discuss, and I have used both of these schools of thought before. And I want to just kind of discuss the pros and cons of each of them, basically schools of thought concerning player attendance. And then I want to give you a homebrew rule I created to help with spotty attendance. And so I'm just going to casually talk through these things. It's an unplugged day here, just going to run with it. Just me talking to you in a very casual way. So, first of all, the two schools of thought for running games in regards to attendance, and I've used both of these, I would say, philosophies in my life, and I'll tell you at the end which one I kind of prefer nowadays. But so, school number one, thought process number one is that you can prepare for high attendance or perfect attendance, and you can prioritize that. Okay, so that's kind of one style. That's one school of thought. It's like we want to strive to have as close to perfect attendance as possible. This will make for the optimal immersion, the optimal game. And then the second school of thought is to prepare for spotty attendance, to be fine with it, and then to make it work in the context of the game to help bolster immersion despite the spotty attendance. So I want to talk about the pros and cons of both of these for a minute, and then I'm going to share my homebrew rule with you. So the big upside to high attendance or perfect attendance is that it really does help immersion and helps you to run a more cohesive game that honestly will probably end up having more depth, especially if the people are really good at role playing together. And the reason for that is because it can be a little weird for four people to show up to session one, and then at session two of those people are not there, and now there are two new people there, right? And then at session three, maybe one of the people from session one is back, but one of them from session two is missing now. And it just is like this revolving door. I ran games like this for years because I played with a lot of people who, let's say that their schedules were pretty chaotic, inconsistent, and I would run really large groups. I would run 12, 13 player groups. But if everyone showed up, I might have 16 players. But the thing was not everyone showed up. I would always get somewhere between 6 and 12 people, and it would be kind of like a rotating. There would be some of those people who were there all the time, but it was almost like then there were rotating extras, right? And so upside to preparing for high and perfect attendance is that you do get better immersion, and you do get a more cohesive core group. The downside to it is that it's hard to do when you're playing with people who don't have perfect schedules or don't have consistent schedules. And to be really honest, if you're playing with younger people, I've noticed that I can expect I'm 37, so I can expect, 37, 38-year-olds, 35-year-olds, 40, 45-year-olds, 50-year-olds. I can expect people in that age range to be way more consistent in showing up to games generally than people who are like under 30 or even more so who are teenagers. And the reason for that is because if you're still playing D&D by the time you're 37, I think it's because you love D&D, not because it's just, it's a thing I could do. I'll choose it if I don't have anything funner to do, right? And that is a key distinction. Personally, at this point in my life, I want to prioritize playing with people who love to play D&D, not just getting people to play D&D with who are choosing it because they don't have anything better to do. Right. Those, I think, two different distinctions. Now, let's talk about preparing for spotty attendance and being fine with it. I think that this is a pretty good approach that some GMs have to take. When I say have to take, I mean, if GMs don't have a broader circle of people who love the game, or they have a lot of people in their circle of friends who are new to the game, or if they're running games for their local game store or anything like that, it's probably going to come with the game that you're going to have some spotty attendance. Now, this is not a game breaker. It's not a game changer, I don't think. Well, it's a game changer, but it's not like a game breaker. It's not a world ender. It doesn't ruin the hobby, but it does come with some disadvantages. The advantages to this are that if you're okay with spotty attendance, then you can build a pretty big rotating door group of people, and you can game every single time. Because if you enlist 13 people to your game and even half of them show up every session, you've still got like a 6-player group every single time. They may be inconsistent. They may be lacking cohesion. It might be weird party dynamics sometimes. Some people may not know what the heck is going on, but you will have 6 players. Okay, so that is its own value to a certain point. The downside is you do lack that cohesiveness. You lack that, generally, that like immersion, that stronger sense of immersion. And that's kind of a downside that some GMs are less okay with than others. And I will be honest, at this point in my life, personally, I am less okay with spotty attendance and that lesser sense of immersion now than I used to be. I used to just like really value playing. And so I would totally compromise and play with people who maybe were not, they were confused or they didn't show up all the time, or maybe they only showed up once a month. When they did, if they had fun and I had fun, then it was worth it to me. Now I kind of want to tell a more like heartfelt storyline. And to do that, it's better to have consistency. So anyway, those are some pros and cons to each of those. And they're both kind of valid in their own way. But I think that as a GM, it's really important for you to think about what you want for your games, right? For you to think about, okay, do I care more about playing every week? Do I care more about just running the game despite if everyone's going to be there every week? Or do I care more about being okay to cancel the game some weeks so that we can have the same people there every time? Because if things come up for those people, they're going to maybe have to cancel. And then am I okay with canceling? Am I okay with that? And then also, do I know people who will show up that way? And if I don't, can I meet those types of people? And then how can I go about that? So every life is different. Every game table is going to be different. And those dynamics, are probably going to be flexible across groups. And that's totally okay. And, those are just some things that as a GM you might want to think about. If you want to have a more like cohesive group that doesn't cancel, that doesn't have spotty attendance, what you might want to do is think about investing in getting to know more people who are interested in playing regularly like you are. But this can be a process. You may have to go to your local game store. You may have to get online and make friends locally. Playing online could be a great option for this because you could literally play with anyone from across the world. As long as you have schedules that are kind of consistent, then you could play with them. And so that's a really cool thing. I'm getting ready to start my second online game ever. I played one a long time ago during the COVID pandemic because we couldn't meet up in person. So that was like an online game. However, I'm getting ready to actually start one just for the fun of it because I think it'd be fun to play with people who I do not live near, and that'd be so awesome. So getting ready to start that. With that being said, you can jump into my Discord. Link is in the description. I'm not going to superimpose it on the screen today because this is an uncut, unplugged, raw video. But if you want to join my Discord, link is in the description. With that being said, I also want to talk about a homebrew rule that I created for when I was running those big rotating games, like where, I might have 15 people sign up for the game, but maybe only 6, 8, 10, 12 would show up, so what I would do, I kind of had 2 homebrew things I would do, but one of them was I created the game knowing beforehand that this is what I was going into. And so I was like, how can I deal with this in a way that will not ruin immersion? So what I did was I set up the game like this. On world number 1, we called it like world 1. There was a lot of death. Magic was dying out. Life was fading out. And all the major governments of the world were trying to figure out, it's a fantasy world saying, they were trying to figure out where the magic is going. And the players were basically ex-soldiers who were like special forces who came from the war. There was like a big war fought over the last of the magical artifacts. And these players were brought to basically this high council of wizards. And they said, we have realized that the reason magic is disappearing from our world is because it's being siphoned into another world. We need to send heroes to that world to stop them from doing it so that our world does not end. Because if they do not stop, our world is going to end. We have no way to defend ourselves against this. We have to be proactive. And we have to send people basically like to another world. We have to send them through like this dimensional portal into another world. And they were like, here's the problem. the only way that we can sustain this connection with that other world and that we can keep you over there, because we don't have the power to send you completely over there. We can only send you over there while we can sustain the connection. And then once you destroy their magic stealing mechanism, you can either come back or you can remain there, but then the connection will be complete and you can choose. But here's the thing though, we have these magic batteries that will sustain you, but sometimes there are outages because the magic is disappearing here. Sometimes a battery will lose power, and then our acolytes will need to kind of shift the batteries around and recharge and doopy doop. So what happens is sometimes you may flicker out of existence. And then they gave everyone like a special ring, and the idea was this ring seals your connection. So if the ring comes off, basically you're going to disappear and you're going to go back to the home world. And then we're going to have to send you through again. It's going to be very expensive. But sometimes you'll just flicker out of existence and be in limbo in the middle because the batteries are basically like, short circuiting from lack of power. Now, so this is what this translated to. If you didn't show up for the session, your character flickered out because of magical interference. Because there was at home on planet 1, there was some kind of glitch. So the players were sent magically through a portal. They landed in the world. They started playing. And then whenever someone couldn't show up, their character flickered out of existence. And when characters would flicker out of existence, all the gear they had on them, like everything they had, would just fall to the ground. Like everything, their clothes, their weapons. And then when they reappeared, they would literally be like naked with nothing. So they developed a system where they would carry each other's gear when they flickered out of existence. And so that was like a homebrew rule I made to try to like make up for the spotty attendance. And it also imposed a little bit of a pain in the butt for people who weren't there. Also, people who weren't there that particular game, they did not gain XP. So we had like this very this like arc of XP where people who were there basically every session ended up being, they reached level 21st, while there were still some people straggling along behind. Some people only came, like I actually was running that game twice a week, and some people only came once or twice a month out of the 8 sessions per month I ran, which was understandable because I set up the game to be that way. It's like you can come, you can play once, you can play twice a month, whatever. Just come, feel free to join us if you'd like. That was like my attitude toward it. It was one of the craziest and funnest games I've ever played. And that homebrew rule really worked. But basically the rule is this: make up a mechanism in your world that explains the spotty attendance. Because one of the weirdest things that hurts immersion is like, we're in a dungeon, we're going to camp here for the night. And then the next session, one of the players doesn't show up. So they wake up and it's like, where did that player go? He couldn't have gone that way. He couldn't have gone that way. Like, it's weird. It hurts immersion. And sometimes as a GM, you have to jump through weird hoops to even explain that. And a lot of times what I do is I say, just ignore it. As a GM, I'm telling you, I'll just ignore it, which hurts the immersion. And, it's, I think it kind of hurts the game. So I like incorporating real life mechanisms to explain spotty absences. But anyway, at the end of the day, I also think this. I think that spotty attendance isn't something that as gyms we should get upset about. I don't think we should take it personally. I don't think we should get mad at people, because there is a temptation when you've done all your prep work to be frustrated with people who don't show up. I don't think this is the right approach. Anything that leads you into a negative frame of mind, I don't think is the right approach. I think that if you decide that you want a different kind of game than that, then it's just a matter of kind of putting in that work to go find the types of people or the types of games that you want, like people who care and prioritize attendance more than you. I've dropped out of games because the GM seemed to lack the attendance ability. Like one time I was going to play in a game, and the GM in the first month canceled like 2 of the 4 games just because I don't really know why they canceled. And I thought to myself, this isn't really the kind of game I want to play in. I was looking forward to this. I show up every time. I'm very I can, you can set your clock by the time I'm going to be there. And so I end up dropping out of that campaign just because I was like, I want something different than this. But I at the time I was younger then, and I was probably a little frustrated with it. Now I wish I wouldn't have been frustrated, because letting that negativity into your mind is never a good thing. I try to be positive, try to stay a happy guy, try to stay upbeat, and have positive thoughts and good thoughts. Not that we'll never have negative thoughts, but if we can buffer them and keep them at bay, and keep our armor class and our wisdom saves high in that respect, it is so much better for our lives, having happy lives. But anyway, so yeah, there you go. Those are my thoughts on when players don't show up to sessions. And I hope that you've enjoyed this edition of Unplugged GM Philosophy in the Morning. So, hey, I'm here almost every day creating videos about the best game in the world, D&D. I will see you awesome people on the next one.